On this episode of Blending Bourbon podcast, join Dixon Deadman from 2XO and myself, David Mark Young from Golden Sheaf, along with Greg Taylor from Hayner Distilling out of Troy, Ohio. Because misery loves company. What does it take to resurrect a pre-prohibition brand? And that's exactly what Greg and team are doing down in Troy. Let's look behind the scenes, under the tent, and take a look at some of the challenges, some of the joys, and the direction that they are going.
Blending Bourbon is the podcast that takes you beyond the barrel and behind the scenes of the whiskey industry with master blenders Dixon Deadman and David Mark Young.
So welcome to another episode of Blending Bourbon, podcast sponsored by Golden Sheaf. My name is Dixon Deadman of 2XO Whiskey, joined by the Danny DeVito to my Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Golden Sheaf himself, David Mark Young, a man that really deserves 4 names, even though he only has 3. How are you today, my good-looking friend?
Fantastic, as always. Man, your intros get better and better.
That's really all I think about during the course
every week
of the day. Yeah, it's just... Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I don't know why you're bothering with these other things you're dabbling in. I'm kidding, of course. Mm-hmm. Gosh, it's always an honor to be here with you. So thank you for the great introduction. It's that time of year. Busy, but good to pause and, think about all of the great things that we have to be thankful for in our lives, including bourbon and family, of course. That's one of the podcasts that we had was we talked about family and how that ties into rolling out bourbon labels and on and on and on. So thanks. Appreciate that. To shift gears a little bit, let's talk about today's podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about...
Come on, you can do this. I have faith in you. It's written on that piece of paper.
I'm trying to build it up. Yeah. I'm trying to build up how to. We're going to talk about something pretty exciting, something near and dear to my heart, and that's pre-prohibition whiskey and brands, and reviving those. And so today, joining us, we have Greg Taylor from Hayner Distilling.
That's correct.
Welcome, Greg.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me today.
Hayner Distilling. So I'm going to back up for a second and tell you how Hayner popped up on my radar. I was out shopping, not even shopping, just kind of looking out on a Sunday, right? And we wandered into some antique stores and come across some really cool pre-prohibition relics, things that I collect. And so we came across this bottle of Hayner whiskey, this bottle distillery from Troy, Ohio. And I wondered, gosh, what happened to that? What did it look like back in the day? This is kind of how it started for me with Golden Sheaf at one point, coming across this brand and these bottles and getting super excited about it. And eventually bringing it back so that, put it back in inventory and bring it back to life, put it on the radar. And so I was shocked by a number of things, one of which is that Hayner, and correct me if I'm wrong, was started in 1866.
That's correct. Yeah, which is yours, correct?
It's just the same. Yeah, it's crazy. 1866, which is the year before Nebraska became a state. So this was produced by, Golden Sheaf was produced by the first distillery in the district of Nebraska because Nebraska wasn't a state yet. Just out of curiosity, do you know when Ohio became a state?
I do not.
No, sorry to put you on the spot. We could edit that out, right? But I wouldn't have known. Gosh, I think it's on our bottle here somewhere. I could be mistaken, but
what's this here?
Yeah, the power.
When did Ohio become a state? That'd be in 1803, David.
1803. Wow. Okay, so Ohio was already a state long before Hayner came along.
We were one of the early ones.
You were. Yep. And then surprised to see also that after Prohibition, the brand was revived and resurrected. And I think I even read something about release number 2 and, you know, a lot of different things. So that's ultimately what led to us connecting a dot and having conversation and going from there. But shocked. Yeah. How exciting to see, you know, such similar backstories, and then to see, you know, the success that you're experiencing. So tell us, how did this happen, and where are you guys at now?
All right. So I alluded to this earlier. Here's my elevator speech. So we actually it began on the Bourbon Trail 7-8 years ago, as many 40, 50-year-old people do. Guys would go down on the Bourbon Trail, take a van full of 8 guys, go down the Bourbon Trail, did it over 2 years, did the 5 or 6 distilleries near Louisville, then the 5 or 6 near Lexington, completed that, got our passport stamped, got our t-shirt at the end of it, and then we came back to Troy, and in Troy we always knew Hayner was from whiskey, but about 3 years after the bourbon, doing the Bourbon Trail, we were touring the Hayner Cultural Center, which has a museum in it dedicated to the history of Hayner, and again, sitting around drinking one night, we thought, why has nobody ever brought back this brand? And we did it. So I was between blessings, as they say. That's between jobs, and I thought, this would be a perfect opportunity to do this. So myself and a friend got together and drew up the business plan, and started down the path of relaunching a pre-prohibition whiskey brand. It took about 2 years to do it, but to get everything in order, from the state permits, the TTB permits, to everything you need to do to launch a brand. And we're excited about it, in that in our small town, our small corner of the world here, it means a lot to this town. Hayner was a significant player in this town for many years, till Prohibition. And the name still means a lot in Troy. We have the Cultural Arts Center, which is it's right in the middle of our town, right downtown, and it's the home to a lot of events in our community.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. Very eerie, to the similar backstories and kind of thought process and that sort of thing. But congrats on your success. I mean, you guys are clearly covering some ground, and I know you've got some significant partnerships and so on and so on. But in keeping in the style and tradition of lifting the tent and looking beneath the flaps and seeing, understanding, I'm just curious if you can talk about, some of the more major hurdles, or, as I was moving down a path, and it's interesting to hear you say that, okay, 2 years or so, kind of in the works, and then you stand this up, and, I not discovered, but the first time I was introduced to Golden Sheaf, I was kind of had this analysis paralysis of, gosh, that would be such a great idea, but how do you do this? And so I did kind of sit and spin for a while, and until eventually you get there, but all the lessons learned going back through that, they certainly apply going forward. I'm just curious, when you decided to pursue this, what was the first major hurdle or challenge that made you question, gosh, is this really a blessing I wish to pursue? Or,
I think the first hurdle, there were 2 major ones, and they contributed to one another. The first hurdle was just the licensing through the state of Ohio. And fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know which yet, but we did this during the pandemic. So in our case, when we're calling a Department of Liquor Control, the state of Ohio, you're talking to an operator sitting at their home, and you can hear the kids in the background, the dogs in the background, because everybody's working from home.
Right.
And that slowed us down tremendously. But it also helped in that what normally might take place on site, they would normally come visit, do inspections, et cetera, and that didn't take place and until we were fully permitted. So throughout the permit process, it was all done remotely. And that it definitely slowed things down. So our experience was quite a bit different, doing that remote permitting, and just figuring that out. Fortunately, my partner is actually a lawyer, so that's definitely helped in figuring out all the permitting and the licensing. And then we did end up hiring an attorney to file our TTB permit. We started down that. And I don't know if you did that yourself, David, or you hired somebody, but that was a very time consuming, and it was more than we could do. We were focusing on, at that point, launching the company and the branding, and from the labels to the bottles, securing your corks and your bottles and trying to get all that stuff online, and submitting that TTB permit. We handed off. Yeah, but just the
Gotcha.
licensing and learning what you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So much of it, I like to say we built the plane as we were flying. I mean, so much of no one. I've not seen a book yet on how to open a distillery in the same file.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not
So
yet.
you figure it
Yeah.
out, right? I mean, you solve one problem, and you wait for the next one. You figure that one out, and you move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny. Business plan, like everybody, I remember when we were getting, and I think I've told the story before on here maybe, but we had I also resurrected a pre-prohibition era brand that was established and built by my great-great-grandfather. We a little after you all in 1876. So you got us by a few years. And that was my previous life. But I remember when we were starting to do this, and I was fortunate enough to have a partner in this who came from the wine world. And his, he had the staff to handle a lot of the licensing and permitting. My job was the whiskey side of things. And, I remember a kind of mentor of mine put me in touch with a broker. This is like 2010, maybe. And this broker, I'm asking this broker, I'm like, hey, I want to start this thing, told him the story, what we're doing. What kind of barrels do you have available? What kind of liquid do you have out? What's and he said, well, I've got this, and this. I said, well, that's great. Let's talk pricing. And he said, well, I need to know more about your business plan. And I was like, what do you mean?
Right.
And the long and short of it is he said, I need to know what price point you're looking at, what's your concept, all this stuff. And I was like, I until I have the foundational element of whiskey to build this brand off of,
Right.
I really can't, and we went back and forth, and I was like, you're kind of asking me to put the cart ahead of the horse here.
Right.
And I thought, my God, is this whole thing going to be like this? I mean, you just assume you go out there, you buy some stuff, you get, a label, you put it out there and you roll with it. And every time I turned around, the things that I thought would be the easiest, half the time turned into the things that made me just want to bang my head against a wall. Why does the liquid guy need to know what price point, and how much we're going to look to produce and that type of stuff? You sell me, I come from the restaurant business. Company, you buy groceries, you turn them into food, you charge whatever you want for them. It just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, it's just crazy how like the little things that you think should be the easy parts of this sometimes turn into the most maddening parts of the process.
So I'm curious, did that relationship pan out? Were you able to work that out, or did you have to move on? Now you have a different.
I ended up buying from that guy later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay.
I think you touched on what was, I think maybe one of the most difficult things of starting a business, a whiskey business, is the sourcing. And so we distill in very limited quantities, do very limited blending, but 99% of the stuff we sell is sourced. And learning that industry and coming into it brand new, there's a huge learning curve. I pretend to know it. Yeah, I don't, but I pretend to know what I'm doing a lot of times in sourcing and talking with the brokers. But I'm still learning. We're only into this about 2 years, and so we're still learning that part of the industry. But it's difficult to get into and very, very expensive.
Yeah, and a lot. David and I were having this conversation earlier. When I started doing this, it was no problem to get 10 barrels here and 15 barrels there, and it didn't take long for that to be a minimum of 50 or a minimum of 150, and that was sourcing. That's not contract distillation. That's just, these brokers didn't want to send you 15 barrels. It wasn't worth their time all of a sudden. Right. And that's a lot of cash to have to lay out to drop, for 50, 75, 100 barrels. I mean, that's really hard for a startup.
And what we're facing now is the pricing, of course, is just skyrocketed. If you guys source, that it's unbelievable. That what a 8-year-old bourbon cost 3 or 4 years ago per barrel. What it costs today, it's probably doubled.
Right.
Easy.
Yeah, in the higher up you go, the higher price they are. I mean, compared to a couple of years ago, I bought some aged wheat whiskey 2-3 years ago, and to even buy some younger than that whiskey today, it's availability is less, but even what you can find is pretty outrageous price wise.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely. Well,
So
misery loves company. I just
stay
want to
on
say
that path. I mean, how far ahead are you guys planning? Are you thinking like where, are you kind of, let's see what we do this year and move to next year? Is it a 5-year plan? Do you have a benchmark for cases or volume or markets or in 5 years and 10 years? I mean, are you guys thinking that strategically with what you're doing, or is it kind of, sometimes depending on what you can get your hands on and how things are moving? I mean,
in our case, it's all those. Yeah, we're trying to buy source stuff right now for 3 years from now. And so, we're looking at 2025, and then you're projecting what are your sales going to be in 2025. Well, you want to be conservative in that, but you also want to make sure you buy enough to meet demand in case you are too conservative.
Right.
So right now it's hard to find those good source barrels, but we're out about 3-4 years buying stuff. We've got the next 2 years easily covered based on our current demand. But demand is going up,
which is a good problem.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm taking some good notes here, guys. This is good stuff.
He's also
agree.
the secretary.
I am the secretary. Well, this is good stuff for me to, I was saying that misery loves company. Like Dixon and I talking about some of his early challenges, and they're just not unique to what I'm doing over here. Everybody's got their unique hurdles, but there's a lot of similarities. And
I'll tell you another story, Greg. And I want you, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, especially because of what you talked about and the pride that your community has in the Hayner name and the Hayner brand. And so David and I kind of connected. He reached out and said, "Hey man, could I just pick your brain a little bit about some of the things you've done or gone through or dealt with or whatever?" And I think David was in this interesting space trying to figure out not only directionally, but also, kind of where he wanted to go with this and how he wanted to build it and things like that. And I remember, he's a proud Omaha-ian, proud Nebraskan. Golden Sheaf is Nebraska. And I told David, I said, the first thing you need to do is own your backyard. Own your backyard. You don't need to take this heritage brand from Nebraska and try to own Kentucky or South Florida or California. Own your backyard and make every Oklahoma resident know your brand, promote your brand, be proud of your brand. And I think, I think good or bad that took some of the, some of your anxiety away when you said, okay, you know what, like this shotgun approach scares me.
Yeah.
Let's take more of this direct rifle approach. Let's focus here and do that. And, I think, you're in that very unique position where people know that name. Mm-hmm. People know the name of your brand. There's a museum to the brand already there. I mean, so, is that kind of, the direction you guys are going right now? It's like, let's be Logan, Ohio is Logan, Ohio.
Well, we're in Troy, Ohio, but that is
Troy, Ohio.
exactly what we're doing in that. So Ohio is a control state, which for your listeners, if they don't understand, in the state of Ohio, when you buy anything over 40 proof, you buy it from the state. The state physically owns that bottle. You're buying it from the state of Ohio. So our bottle shop in the state of Ohio, we have the bonded premises, which is I'm in now. We have a separate room, which is our bottle shop. Any bottles in the bottle shop, the state owns. I've already been paid for them. I've got my money. When I sell them, the state swipes that out of my checking account the next day. So they own those bottles. So what that does in the state is they own the whole distribution network. And when the state of Ohio, when you want to locate your bottles in a state liquor store, there's a portal. As a distillery, you log on, you say, hey, I'd like to have my bottles in the state liquor store. And they will, you have to take it to a warehouse, but they distribute to all the state liquor stores for you. So that was huge. And that allows us to do just that is to own our backyard. We picked 50, we're in 50 of the 500 state liquor stores, and those 50 are so those 50 are within 30 miles of us. So we're in 50 state liquor stores, but they're all very regionally located to us here in Troy. And and it'll, over time we might branch out and go further out across the state. But on the other side of the state, way up in Cleveland, they don't know Hayner, and so getting into that market is going to be more difficult than breaking into the market. 50 miles south in Cincinnati. We're approaching Cincinnati, which is about 50 miles south, and we'll make some headway into that slowly. But yeah, right now we're very, very local, very regionalized.
Are you guys starting to see demand from other regions inside the state of Ohio as well as outside?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon for us to get requests for state liquor stores up in Cleveland wanting to carry the product. But so far we're actually denying those requests because we want to keep it local. We want to own the backyard. We want the demand to build here before we go further out to the state.
Yeah, that's good. Interesting. Wow.
So we're definitely backyard distillery. We visit. I personally will visit every bar and that I can, a restaurant that I can get into, and ask them to carry our product. In the state of Ohio, we can sell directly to bars and restaurants, or that bar and restaurant can ask for our bottle from the local liquor store wherever they pull their liquor from.
Wow.
So I know, actually, I was communicating with him earlier today because we're both going to be in Dallas together on Saturday. But all of our mutual good friend Dan Calloway says great things about Hayner and Greg, you guys, and everything. And I know you're I saw on your website y'all are working with BBC and but I'm so as your brand evolves and as you guys continue to grow and develop, are you is your plan to have you built a profile that you want to grow, that you want to stick with? Is it kind of I as someone who did this, sometimes you're at the mercy of what you have available to you, and you just sit down and say, I got what I got, and I'm just going to make the best whiskey I can make. But is there a certain brand that you're, for example, we had Mike Palladini on here, and Mike was saying that when they started their brand, his brand's Penelope, and they wanted to go after that Basil Hayden consumer. They first release was a 4-grain, 80 proof, and they just went out and tried to convert Basil Hayden drinkers into Penelope drinkers. Are you guys thinking that way? Or are you kind of like, look, we're doing the Hayner thing, and the Hayner thing is the Hayner thing? Or
a lot of our branding and marketing now is based on. So we got extremely lucky with partnering with Bardstown Bourbon Company, with BBC, like you said, and Dan and Susie down there were our two contacts. We've made 6 or 7 trips down there visiting with Dan and working on blend. And so our profile is we'll a source, and we've been blessed to have Bardstown Bourbon Company be our contract distiller. They recently made 300 barrels for us. And so while those barrels age, so now we're waiting for those barrels to come of age, we'll continue to source from them for our bourbon blends. And we've decided to go on we're at a higher price point. We're $59 in the state of Ohio. We're $59.95 for our bourbon. In the state of Ohio, that's actually a premium, although prices are coming up, so it's not so premium anymore. And so we put some 13-year-old bourbon in there, and that per barrel, that's very expensive. And we just bought some 9-year-old bourbon per barrel, that's very expensive. So we could buy 3-4 year bourbon all day long, but it's not going to give the profile, the flavor that we're looking for. So we've made a decision to spend a little more. We're going to charge a little bit more, but we're also spending a little bit more to get a premium product.
And they're like I think you said 90 proof. Is that
Yeah.
or what proof? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we're at 90 proof. Yeah, and I just had the best time going down to Bardstown and doing that blend, and that was just a neat experience. First of all, no, if you haven't been there, I'm sure you guys have, but your listeners, it's a place you need to visit. First class, top notch distillery.
Oh yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, great people, really have their stuff together. It's interesting too how, not to get off on a tangent here, but innovative company in a traditional market space. They're really blazing a path ahead and doing a lot of really good things. So yeah, great partner you have there.
The transparency of them, and that's something we've carried on is that we don't. We're very transparent that we blend, that we did not distill this ourselves, that we source it, and we have exactly what's in it. We show the blend, what's in our bourbon, and we got that from them because they're very. I don't know if they're one of the first, but definitely they're
definitely
they're one of the leaders right now in transparency.
Yeah,
definitely the first. When I started Kentucky Owl in 2014, NDP was like, there wasn't, that was a dirty word.
Right.
You were just, there's 2 strikes against you as an NDP right out of the gate. And, I think that's one of the great things that has happened in this industry. And it comes with both education of consumer as well as, people looking for, kind of new, innovative ways and to skin this cat, so to speak, and a real understanding and appreciation for a blender and someone who can take aged stuff, and whether they work through maturation, but also the blending and the complementing of flavors. And it's not. An NDP was always, you just bought somebody's stuff and put it in your bottle and said it was yours. And I think the consumer now has a much greater understanding of the fact that there's a lot more that goes into that for a lot of brands anyway than just that.
Yeah, you can blend stuff together and quickly get something awful. It took a long time, believe it or not, a lot of experimentation to get something that we thought was top notch. And we would do some blends, and everybody, we'd have a panel of people. Everybody would agree, no, that's not right. And so you would change percentages. Excuse me. You change percentages of barrels until you got the flavor profile you're going after.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. One of the first people or groups of folks that I talked with when I was debating whether or not to pursue this was Bardstown, and it was Peter Lofton and Dave Mandel back in the day. And they're one of the original dialogues I had about actually blending versus, being an NDP versus producing, getting a DSP and producing our own liquid. I think back then the lens was a little bit different. Like the direction for me was assumed that, a lot of these micro distilleries were, just going to follow suit. They're going to, start up, are going to make a bunch of vodka, sell it, have some events, track people, get people in there, laying barrels down for the future, and then eventually have a, mature enough, juvenile product, if you will, in order to release our own stuff. But then, there's an evolution, there's a transition, and that's, I'm not saying that's the wrong way to do it. It was the wrong way for me. And so the prospect of being able to do it without having to have a still, having a big operation, having to go to the bank and ask for $20 million was pretty appealing. So, and they've been, gosh, this was like 2000, I forget when they broke ground, but I don't know, 2015, 16, 2015, I think. And they've always been, like you said, transparent, always been helpful, and looking forward to having some of those folks on here in the future. Steve Nally, Dan Kellaway.
So we can let you get back to selling bottles, because you got better things to do than talk to us knuckleheads. But I gotta ask, because you mentioned and David. I don't know if you know this about David Mark Young, but he had a very prestigious and successful. I don't know if you say successful, but David is a hero. He's a Marine. He he served, got into cybersecurity and was very successful. I like to think it was just taking viruses from people's laptops after they watched too much pornography on them, but he claims it was something bigger than that. My background is hospitality. It's restaurant in business in Kentucky. I kind of fell backwards into this thing and find myself now doing it full time. And we talk often. I mean, with all the challenges and all the stuff that comes with it, I absolutely love what I'm doing. The business I was in, I didn't know there was a more rewarding business until, and it's just different headaches, but the same headaches. But it's an equally rewarding thing. And there are times over my career in this industry, I can count them on one hand, where I thought, "What the hell was I thinking?" Are you still having those things pop up every once in a while? You're like, "Oh my gosh, what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I get myself into?"
That does happen, but like you said, I mean, we're blessed. I feel blessed to work in this industry, and I literally come to work loving what I do. And so it's those moments are okay because we're in a good place. My background is car sales. Worked at a car dealership for over 20 years. Family business. Wow. Ran a Ford dealership, and when that sold, I decided to invest in whiskey. So which I've enjoyed far more than investing in automobiles and selling automobiles.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, I wondered what your previous blessing was.
Yeah.
Prior to making and selling whiskey. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure down in Kentucky, it's pretty common for folks to grow up in the industry, and with the legacy of bourbon whiskey in that area. I shouldn't just limit it to Kentucky, but around here, it's unheard of for people to grow up in the business and take over, as. So it's interesting. I've come across a number of folks with varied backgrounds of what they've done. And it's always, I'm curious why people would gravitate. I know why I'm here and what I'm doing. And I agree. It's very fulfilling. It's very exciting for me. I love it. I'm passionate about it. I could talk bourbon all day long until you're telling me to shut up. And, so yeah, that's interesting for sure. I do have a question about, you guys have a great backstory. I love, I've always said that the formula for success, at least for Golden Sheaf, one of them is to have an interesting backstory, a truthful backstory, and, something that sort of reels people in or lures them into that first taste. And then it's paramount that first taste is memorable and, high premium quality. But there's always a reference point back to that backstory. But the juice keeps people coming back, right? They don't just buy a bottle one and done and move on. But in your experience, kind of how does that balance out? What's leading you to success, and what are you emphasizing as far as your kind of go to market strategy?
I think what you said is exactly right. In that I believe the bottle and the story will often sell the first bottle, but what's inside of it will sell the second and third. You got to have the product to back it up. And we've got a great backstory, like you said, being the one of the largest mail order whiskey companies in the world out of little Troy, Ohio.
Right.
And it's a story that we love to share because nobody knows about it. And so every time we share it, we're telling telling somebody something new that's exciting. And it's a big part of our community, and we're proud of it, and we're proud to share about Troy, and proud to share all the Hayner history.
Absolutely.
Greg, I can tell you worked in a family business. That was my grandfather. His line was always, I'm not real worried about renting those people a room the first time. I want to make sure we're renting them that room the 7th time, the 8th time, the
Exactly.
9th time. It's like I'm not worried about selling you that first car, but when you need another one, I want to make sure you're coming back here. And that's I think about that with every bottle we run too. It's like, if you can create something that becomes something special to somebody, it's that's as important of, owning your backyard when somebody from Troy has a friend or family come in from out of town, you want them to say, hey, you got to try this. This is from right here. And I think that's I think that's the way you got to go about it.
Yeah, we love when that happens. On the holidays, of course, a lot of people are coming back home to visit family, and they'll come in here and because they want to buy a piece of Troy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And they've heard it's good stuff, so that works well too.
Even better, yeah. And and I'm just going to highlight one of the. I don't think of myself as being a picky. I don't know what the right word is. I am picky. I'm very picky.
Picky.
And I try not to judge other brands, but there is one particular style of whiskey or spirits, or altogether for that matter, that I do sort of turn my nose up at, and that's those that just want to put a lot of liquid into a lot of bottles and cover a lot of shelves and make a lot of money. Which there's nothing wrong with that. It's the American dream. However, I take a particular interest in bourbon and whiskey because I only drink quality stuff, and to see those, I even there's a couple folks I know that's their goal. How do we increase our margins? How do we sell more? Where can we sell more? That kind of thing. And then you're getting stuff out on shelves in other states and other areas, regions even, but then are you able to keep up with sustaining those previous locations, regions that you've put stuff on the shelf. And so you get what you get, ultimately, is what I'm saying. So it's refreshing to have 3 folks here, label owners, that really take it to heart, the quality of the juice that's in the bottle. I personally think that's very, very important.
The only thing I would like to correct you on from that statement, and I agree with everything you said, except the part where you said you only drink premium stuff. And I think you need to say, I only drink premium stuff like before 11 o'clock at night or something like that. Because I've seen you order some pretty shady stuff late in an evening. Just putting that out there. But,
especially when it wasn't what we thought it was.
That was different time.
That was different.
But Greg, it has been great having you on here. Thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us and tell us more about what you're doing. I think from what it sounds like, you've got a lot of good stuff ahead of you. We're going to have to get our hands on some Hayner, and maybe I'm sure Dan Calloway's got a bottle there I can steal from or something.
We'll make it happen.
Do they sell out of the shop there?
They do not yet. No, we're working.
They don't.
We're working on that.
Yeah, okay. I figured. Well, yeah. My sentiments exactly. Thank you, Greg Taylor. Thank you from Hayner Distillery, and that's HaynerDistilling.com.
Yes.
Check them out.
Or just Hayner.com. We'll get you there.
Just Hayner.com. Okay, good to know. Again, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
I appreciate the invite. It's been great being here, and good luck to both of you, and we'll hope to talk to you again.
Same here. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Cheers, Greg.
Thanks. Bye.
Cheers, Dixon. Be sure to like, follow, share, subscribe, comment. Let us know what questions you have, what we can dive deep down into, what's interesting for you, our audience, because you are most important to us. We want to talk about what's important to you. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Cheers.